is more important. So merge the login scenarios with, let's say, make payment. And of course, if login fails, you cannot make a payment, right? So make payment flow will break. But you have lesser number of tests. And again, in a team, getting everyone to work consistently, and even more importantly, to think consistently is difficult. So make sure you have a few champions identified. Few people who are really passionate about testing and automation, and who will keep an eye on the various kind of tests being written. These people have to have had some sort of training, some sort of mentoring, where they can actually catch, oh, hold on, there are just too many tests now. We are breaking the test pyramid. It's starting to look like an ice cream cone. Let's course correct right now. Because if everyone is just very story focused, these kind of deviations will get missed. So again, maybe the tech lead or the QA lead is a good person to start with, but it doesn't have to be a lead person. It can be anyone who's just interested in keeping a watch. Test data is always an issue. At a unit level, I can easily resort to, I have a method, it takes some arguments. I'll send 1 to 3, I'll send 3 to 4, whatever I need, right? Just to that method. At a system level, you don't invoke methods. At a system level, the data will probably be coming from the UI. Someone has filled something in the form. It will be probably coming from a database table, or it will be probably coming from a web service call. It basically means that today you have, let's say, a product XYZ that you're testing about, but that goes away from the database, or maybe the inventory goes to 0 and it was supposed to be available. So now when your automation test runs, it will not find product XYZ. So that could break your test. Dependent system checks, right? So your system could be making a call to another system via an API or via some other mechanism. That system could be down. So rather than finding out late, let's say there are multiple steps, 3 steps, and on the 3rd step you make that web service call. So your first 2 steps pass and the third step fails, but not because of your system's fault, but the other system was down, right? So try to move those kind of checks up front. Don't even start your automation scripts until you've verified that each of your dependent systems are up and running. So you can just write one small automation script which just checks that these systems are responding with whatever random data, and then kick off your automation test. And of course, those systems that you're not really interested in testing, you're more interested in a certain other set of systems, you can just stub out the ones that you do not care about from a functional checking point of view. These stubs are usually HTTP based stubs. Let's talk about efficient manual testing. Sorry, there's a question. Sure. It is definitely possible. I've not called that out. But something again that we've learned is while in the quadrant, performance testing and security testing comes as critiquing the product. There was a tendency to do those really late around nearing release time. But today, a lot of agile teams actually put performance and security automation in their CI build itself, continuous integration build. So you get immediate feedback almost on every commit. Sorry?
What kind of performance scenario will be implemented in the because when performance got uploaded about number of users, number of rows and all this.
Yeah.
And there we are about unit level. So what kind of scenario will be implemented?
Unit level is more TDD. ADDD is actually a little higher up in the test pyramid, but in parallel to development. Right? So that's where once you're analyzing your requirements, you should also analyze your cross-functional requirements for the particular story. If you're talking about this is my account overview page, and these are the portions that should appear, and that's part of your story, right? One section of the story should also be this page should respond in, let's say, under 3 seconds. It should load up in under 3 seconds. So you can also write automation that makes a call to that page and checks whether it's returning under 3 seconds or not. Sure, and you can simulate it because your NFRs, I'm just simplifying it, but your NFRs will actually call out for these many users in parallel. This is the kind of performance impact it will have. Go ahead. Yeah. And again, remember, critiquing the product still has its place. This will not be a replacement of that, because you do not want. I was going to say you cannot simulate prod, but these days with DevOps, you should be able to simulate prod very easily. But perhaps you do not want to replicate prod for each and every code commit that you make. So what you get is indicators of performance in these kind of tests. That today it was 5 seconds, tomorrow it's become 7 seconds, and day after it's become 8 seconds. For let's say 1 user or 10 users. But you can kind of have a formula that, okay, this will definitely not work for 1,000 users. And then you do a more detailed investigation. Yeah. Typically, again, we have a staging or UAT environment ready by at least the second iteration. That's what we try to do. And then what we do is every iteration showcase, we actually try to do it on the UAT or the staging environment. So you try to upfront that as well. Yes, every iteration. So moving on to manual testing. This is something I've seen people struggle again and again. And this is not just true for client teams, client testers who are getting into agile testing, but even ThoughtWorks testers struggle with this. It's a difficult problem to solve, but in a few suggestions. Make sure you're relying on whatever skills you have available in your team. Again, testing quality is not just a QA's responsibility, a tester's responsibility, it's a shared responsibility. Hence, automation of tests is also a shared responsibility. And if it's a shared responsibility, devs need to participate. Because remember, it's again a mindset shift from critiquing the product to supporting the programming. And a dev needs feedback about each and every commit that they make, whether it's gonna actually work or not, or it's gonna break something else. So devs need to collaborate on automation. Manually test only those things which cannot be automated or should not be automated. For the others, just focus on automation. So leave only a very small subset that is worthy of manual testing. So again, referring back to the test pyramid, it has to be a small exploratory subset up in the pyramid. Automate in parallel to development. And of course, the dev QA ratio. I mean, if your dev QA ratio is screwed up, then there'll always be bandwidth issues. One person cannot do the job of like 3 persons, right? So get that right. If you have too many manual scenarios, which also is inefficient, again, scope in manual scenarios to just what's being implemented in the current iteration. Leave regression to automation as far as possible. Consolidate manual scenarios. We talked about story level scenarios being consolidated into flow level scenarios. And we already mentioned more automation, right? The last one is interesting, where I've worked with client teams, and I almost think of testers as the equivalent of the business analyst. I expect that from them. But it's interesting how many testers lack the domain knowledge. They just become followers of some Excel sheet. Like, this is the scenario, do these steps, pass, fail, keep marking it, right? And that will really hinder you from moving your testing upstream. And testers participating right from the requirement level. Testers, QAs need to have business domain knowledge. So again, pair with business analysts when the requirements are being gathered, help them with the paper prototyping, do that sort of testing right up front. Identify your test scenarios before development happens. Run client showcases. It's not just that one project manager or scrum master or the tech lead should be demonstrating to the client. Because a lot of times when you're showcasing to the client, you get such great insights from the client's perspective that perhaps even your business analyst will not be able to predict. And that's the best way of getting domain knowledge, feedback directly from your clients, from your business stakeholders. And of course, you can also have focused training around the business, right? Timely feedback, very critical. One of the reasons we are doing upstream testing, to get feedback at the right time. Else you are again just testing the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? A big issue can be a team which is almost completely new to Agile, including the developers, including the infra people. So your CI, your continuous integration practices themselves are missing. So how can you do automation if you do not have CI tools in place? So again, solution is get someone dedicated to get the CI tool set up. Train your team members to at least the basic usage of a version control system, how frequently to commit, integrate often, those kind of practices and that mindset. And of course, once you have those things in place, just start automating parallel to development. Continuous integration, where different teams, I think Anand touched upon it, different team members are committing to a common code repository. And as soon as there is a commit, that's a commit that every developer will start seeing, because they'll have to pull back from the version control. And you get automated feedback that your unit tests are working against the committed code, and everything is passing, or something has failed. Unit tests are still okay. As you move up the pyramid, just code is not enough. You need the entire ecosystem. You need a database, you need a web service that you'll be calling, either a real implementation or a stub implementation. And things like those need to be simulated. VMs are really efficient these days. Gone are the days where VMs were very, very slow. You had to procure actual hardware to be able to simulate an environment and run tests on them, but now VMs are really, really efficient. So provision, set up a dedicated VMs that your automated tests will run against. Again, do not share this with manual usage of those environments. Because again, you do not want a manual intervention, manually change some data, and then your automated test suddenly starts failing, because it was expecting that data to be there. So have separate environments for manual testing and CI automated testing. Once you have those, you can start thinking of automating this process of creating VMs themselves. That's where DevOps is a really big buzz these days. It helps you deal with infrastructure as code. And similarly for databases, your schemas, evolutionary databases, database refactoring, all that helps. I've also seen a lot of teams have scheduled CI builds. What I mean is there'll be a concept of nightly build or an hourly build. Move away from that, move away from that. You need timely feedback and then have a higher goal than an hourly feedback. Timely feedback is I commit, and within 15-20 minutes max I get feedback, right? And as Anand was mentioning, for ThoughtWorkers it's even lesser. We get very frustrated as soon as we cross 5 minutes. So how do you do that? Trigger builds per commit. You probably have an hourly build. It's probably a smell. It's an indicator that something else is wrong. What's probably wrong is that your feedback cycle is very slow. So again, focus on getting your test pyramid right. A lot of unit tests which will run thousands in like under 3 seconds. And fewer, more important ones at a UI level, right? That will reduce your runtime. That will help you trigger builds per code change. There'll be still a few which are slow. For example, performance, you're simulating security. Sorry? Trigger build per commit here. Right. And that's why I was mentioning separate manual testing environments and CI testing environments. When I say CI, I just mean purely automated. So a code change is detected in the version control, and your automated tests just kick off against the latest code. So in that case, you do not really have this issue of multiple people trying to use the same environment, because you'll just have one automation series of scripts running against the latest code. I was talking about slow stages. There will be still a few stages which are slow. You can separate them out into parallel builds. You can trigger off multiple builds by one commit. You'll get faster response from the unit tests, and maybe a little delayed response from the slower phases. Another reason some people have nightly builds is because there are multiple teams working on multiple systems, and you need a higher level integration. So at the end of the day, you integrate every team's work. But again, there are better solutions to that, better alternatives. One is composite builds, where so far I've been talking about CI for one particular team. Imagine a similar setup, CI tools, CI automated tests, and CI environments for another team. But then you can also have a CI build using Jenkins or Go or whatever tool you want, which consolidates the artifacts, the outputs of both of these teams CI, and then runs a combined build. So look at those alternatives, and again, trigger them per commit. You don't have to wait till the end of the day. Sure, your feedback will be a little delayed, but it's still better than waiting till the next day. And of course, delayed testing in general. So again, focus on getting manual test checks done. I talked about the test check process where the QA just steps over to the developer's machine and tests it right there, the first pass. Don't go into over-the-wall situation. The developer says it's done, I'm moving on to another story. The tester starts testing it, so hold on, there's an issue. I'll raise a defect. The developer will now say, oh no, I started on a different story, I'll come back to this issue later. So try to prevent that as much as possible. Developer is not done until a test check is done. A bare minimum test from the QA standpoint or a BA standpoint. CI deployment pipeline, what I've seen is sometimes, from a manual testing perspective now, is that testers have to wait till, because remember, manual testing is about creating the product. It's not about code anymore, it's about creating the product. So you need a deployed environment. So testers just have to waste time waiting till the software is actually deployed on some machine, some QA machine, right? So again, try to automate that process at least. So there's again a concept called a deployment pipeline, which puts multiple of these concepts one after the other. So you start off with a developer committing code. That leads to that being compiled. The compiled thing is unit tested. It then goes through an automated functional UI test, right? Again, no manual intervention here. And the last step is, hey, we've done these passes